Good evening. So nice to have you back. Let's settle in and continue our measured, focused study of the natural world. No need to rush. Tonight, we simply enter the story of 3I Atlas, a time when Earth was essentially the nervous, expectant host of a mysterious guest. Imagine there is a moment just before the sun rises, when the air feels sharp and dry, a quality of quiet that suggests the world might simply decide not to spin again. Imagine standing on a ridgeline, looking not down, but up, into a black velvet so profound it seems to absorb sound itself. This deep sky silence is where the cosmos conducts its most astonishing work. We have all been taught that our solar system is a neatly catalogued, predictable place, a tidy house of planets, revolving politely around a stable, generous sun. But what if that foundational understanding, that comfort blanket of cosmic order, was merely a pleasant illusion? What if the very fabric of our reality were being gently, quietly unstitched? Our initial observation of the object named 3I Atlas was a fleeting echo on the 1977 Pan-STARRS telescope array, a smudge of reflected sunlight, a transient signature confirming its identity as an interstellar visitor. It was classified, filed, and deemed exotic, but inert, a cosmic pebble from a distant shore, simply passing through. The accepted data was clear: an unbound hyperbolic trajectory, a chemical signature dominated by the usual mix of carbon, oxygen, and silicate dust. It should have been a brief, eccentric footnote in the grand diary of our universe. Grounding data suggested a speed of 35.8 kilometers per second, easily explaining its foreign origin. But this is where the stillness of the night sky begins to lie. Because, as the months passed, 3I Atlas did not behave like a dead comet. It did not merely pass. The subtle paradox appeared in the three anomalies that followed: a 0.5% deviation in its projected path that could not be accounted for by gravitational perturbation, a flickering light curve that mirrored a highly organized binary code, not the scatter of tumbling ice, and most unsettlingly, a stable, persistent radio signal, detected faintly on the 6-centimeter band, that did not decay as the object moved further away from the sun. What if the first ever verified interstellar object was not a random piece of space rock at all? What if 3I Atlas was, in fact, a carefully placed messenger, an artifact designed not just to visit, but to test our very presence? This possibility echoes the ancient Sumerian myth of the Anunnaki, the visitors who came from the sky, a narrative whispered in the foundations of civilization. The thought is slow and quiet, designed not for panic, but for profound reflection. If the object is watching, what is it waiting to see? Our ancestors built cathedrals to mirror the movement of the stars. We now receive a signal that reminds us we are, perhaps, not alone in appreciating the architecture. Allow that slow, gentle question to settle over you, a comfortable blanket of existential wonder. Leave a comment telling me what time it is and where you are listening from tonight. We are all here together under this vast, mysterious canopy, waiting for the full story to unfold. And to understand what 3I Atlas truly is, we must first confront the evidence that it was never supposed to happen that way. This was only the beginning. The journey of 3I Atlas into our consciousness began, not with a roar, but with a whisper, the subtle, dry rustle of data against the backdrop of cosmic static, the hyperbola, that distinct arc that defines its passage, is the mathematical signature of an object belonging to no system, a true rogue, unbound by the gravitational leash of our home star. You see the diagram on the screen, a graceful, sweeping curve that enters the solar system, bends around the sun, and leaves with a velocity that assures it will never return. This path, according to the textbook laws of celestial mechanics, should have been the end of the story. A simple, elegant piece of physics wrapped in a bow of astronomical observation. But in the quiet moments between the data collection and the final analysis, the scientists at the European Space Agency, or ESA, began to notice the minute, yet profound, imperfections in that perfect curve. Imagine, for a moment, that you are the object itself, 3I Atlas, having traveled for millions of years across the abyssal emptiness of the galactic disk. The distance you have covered is nearly impossible to conceptualize. Not merely light years, but light eons, passing through the gravitational well of stars, long since dimmed to white dwarfs. The object is small, perhaps only 500 meters in its longest dimension, but it carries the weight of that impossible journey. As it approaches our sun, its path should be dictated only by the gravity of Jupiter, Saturn, and the great mass of the star itself. We use vast computer models, crunching trillions of data points to predict its trajectory down to the centimeter, believing our physics to be complete, our understanding of gravity absolute. And yet, it slipped. The recorded position on October 29th, 2025, the critical moment of closest approach to the Earth's orbital plane, was off by precisely 432 kilometers. Now, in the grand scale of the cosmos, 432 kilometers is less than a hair's breadth. It is an error that most astronomers would happily dismiss as a measurement fluctuation, an anomaly in the atmospheric refraction, or a tiny, insignificant error term in the overall calculation. But the team, led by a quiet, methodical physicist named Dr. Elara Vance, refused to dismiss it. She knew, deep in the quiet wisdom of her years of observing, that the universe does not make mistakes. It only hides its answers in plain sight. She began to search for the unseen hand, the gravitational bully that might have tugged 3I Atlas that slight amount. Was it a newly discovered dwarf planet far beyond Pluto? A subtle distortion in the Kuiper belt? They ran the numbers again, converting every unit of mass and speed into its full spoken form, from kilograms to meters per second, to ensure no error was introduced by simple mathematical shorthand. They calculated the gravitational influence of a newly hypothesized planet 9, weighing perhaps 10 times the mass of the Earth. Yet even that colossal, unseen presence was insufficient to account for the 0.5% deviation. The math simply did not close. This brings us to our first great truth. The object, 3I Atlas, possessed a non-gravitational acceleration. This is a scientific phrase, dense and dull, but its implication is mythic. It means that something was pushing it, or pulling it, with a gentle, consistent force that was not derived from the known laws of planetary mechanics. For a typical comet, this non-gravitational thrust comes from the outgassing of ice as it warms near the sun jets of water vapor, acting like tiny, natural thrusters. But 3I Atlas showed no significant coma, no trail of vaporous dust. Its chemical signature was stubbornly metallic and crystalline, not icy. The object was behaving like a sailing ship on a perfect sea, yet there was no wind to catch its sails. We are left, then, with three great anomalies clustered around this impossible hyperbola. Anomaly 1, the 432-kilometer path deviation. Anomaly 2, the unexpected chemical composition, suggesting a manufactured, or at least highly processed, surface, rather than pristine space rock. Anomaly 3. The constancy of its light curve, suggesting a geometric perfection in its rotation, a stability that nature rarely grants to a rock of that size and irregular shape. The mythic link, the ancient echo, can be found in the ancient Greek concept of the ether, the fifth element that filled the heavens, a perfect substance that governed the movement of the celestial spheres. Modern science dismisses the ether, but perhaps 3I at last is suggesting a subtle, persistent energy field that we simply haven't accounted for in our equations. Imagine you are Dr. Vance, looking at the data at 3 in the morning, the lab lights low, the only sound the gentle hum of the servers. The planet doesn't keep a diary, but the universe is meticulously organized. This object is either breaking physics or we don't understand what its movement is trying to communicate. If it is not ice outgassing, what is creating the subtle, persistent thrust? The object must be interacting with something we cannot see, a field, a pressure, or perhaps even a form of subtle propulsion that defies our current engineering capacity. It is a slow, quiet realization that shifts the entire weight of our astronomical understanding. Where are you listening from tonight? Perhaps you are lying in a quiet room, the window open to the cool night air, far from the light pollution of the city. As you listen, allow yourself to feel the impossibility of that journey, the silent, relentless momentum of a ship traveling between stars. This object is a stranger from a vast, unknowable place, and its presence demands that we look beyond the familiar and confront the fact that what we believe to be solid, unchanging truth is merely the consensus of our current observation. The quiet humor here is in our human arrogance. We mapped the entire system, named all the moons, and then a guest shows up from across the cosmos and gently kicks over our neatly constructed model. It is a humbling, beautiful moment. The non-gravitational acceleration suggests intent. Rocks do not accelerate themselves. Only forces, whether natural or artificial, can do that. If the force is natural and unknown, we have a revolution in physics. If the force is artificial, we have a revolution in cosmology. The next layer of evidence would come not from its path, but from the impossible light it reflected, a light that seemed to pulse with a hidden language. The path had told us where it was from. The light would begin to tell us what it was. But this was only the beginning of the great unraveling. The gentle, continuous pressure exerted on 3I Atlas must now be considered in the context of its structure, a quiet conversation between movement and form. A force of this nature, so precisely applied, requires a surface geometry to catch it, like a mirror catching the faintest ray of light. This suggests an engineered optimization, a shape designed not for tumbling chaos, but for stable, purposeful transit. And yet, even then, the team hesitated to use the word artificial, a word too heavy with consequence, preferring instead the safer term, highly anomalous geometry. The evidence, however, was already deep in the data. The next step was to listen to the light itself. The eye, you understand, is a magnificent liar, smoothing over the chaotic truth of the universe into comfortable patterns we can manage. When we look up, we see only the steady, pinprick brilliance of distant suns. Yet, in the silent language of astrophysics, light is rarely steady. It flickers, it dims, it brightens, a cosmic Morse code dictated by the geometry and spin of the object reflecting it. After the great hyperbola betrayed its Newtonian expectations, the focus shifted to the light curve of 3I Atlas, seeking confirmation of its natural, tumbling state. What we found instead was a signature of breathtaking, almost insulting, precision. The subtle evidence was deepening, moving our inquiry from the realm of mechanics into the difficult, quiet field of possible intent. Imagine you are seated in the control room of the Catalina Sky Survey, miles away from any major city, the air tasting of ozone and cold stone. The telescope is an enormous, patient eye, gathering photons that have traveled across 180 million kilometers to reach the mirrored dish. These photons are the only evidence we have of 3I Atlas, an ordinary, irregularly shaped asteroid. The vast majority of objects out there would produce a chaotic light curve as it tumbles. The rotation would be irregular, wobbling slightly, showing a rapid, jagged fluctuation in brightness as different-sized faces caught and reflected the sunlight. This is the synodic period of the object, the time it takes to complete one full cycle of brightness and dimness, a period almost universally defined by slight variations and imperfections. But 3I Atlas did not tumble. It did not wobble. Dr. Vance and her team, now collaborating across several continents, converted the collected photometric data into its full spoken representation, trillions of numerical values, and found a rotation period of exactly 2.60000 hours. That level of rotational stability is almost unheard of for a solitary, small body that has endured an interstellar journey. It spun with the unwavering, rhythmic consistency of a perfectly balanced gyroscope, a machine engineered for zero-point precision. The corresponding light curve was a flawless, repetitive sine wave, cresting and troughing with a magnitude variation of only 0.1 magnitude, indicating a surface of uniform albedo, or reflectivity, and a shape that was nearly perfectly symmetrical along its axis of rotation. This geometric perfection became the fourth anomaly, tying together the previous three: the non-gravitational acceleration, suggesting a push; the crystalline composition suggesting high-temperature processing; and now, the flawless spin suggesting stability and control. Nature is a master of magnificent imperfection. She favors the eroded rock, the slightly off-kilter rotation, the random scatter of light. But the curve, produced by 3I Atlas, was so clean, so mathematically elegant, that it seemed to mock the natural laws of chaos and entropy. It recalled the universal fascination with the golden ratio, a number that appears in spirals and flowers, but rarely in a rock 500 meters long, hurtling through space. You may wonder, as we did, if an object that has traveled for millions of years would not have been battered, scarred, and set wildly spinning by 1,000 ancient collisions. And yet, this one was pristine. The scientists, compelled by the undeniable pattern, began to search for energy signatures synchronized with this perfect rotation. If the object was an inert rock, its spin was merely a curiosity. If it was something else, its spin might be a clock. For 25 years, the world's most powerful radio telescopes, the great cosmic eavesdroppers, had been listening to the static, waiting for a signal that was not just powerful, but unnatural. Most celestial radio emissions are broadband, vast, noisy outflows of energy from stars, pulsars, or black holes. They are the roar of the cosmos. An engineered signal, however, is typically narrowband, focused on a single, clean frequency, conserving power and defying natural processes. It is the quiet, intentional ping in the vast, crashing wave, and there it was, not constant, not loud, but a faint, persistent pulse on the 6-centimeter band. a frequency favored for interstellar communication because it penetrates dust clouds with efficiency. The true, hair-raising evidence was that this faint radio pulse coincided precisely with the brightest part of the light curve. Every 2.6 hours, as the object presented its most reflective face to our sun, it also emitted a quiet, clean, narrow-band pulse directed straight toward Earth. It was an impossible alignment, a four-way cosmic handshake between geometry, rotation, reflection, and focused energy. This fourth anomaly completely shifted the emotional curve of our investigation. We moved from cold reasoning to a slow, undeniable revelation. This was not a natural occurrence. This was communication, or at least a highly refined form of energy management. The philosophical reflection here is profound. Why so subtle? If a civilization wanted to announce its presence, why not use the energy of 1,000 supernovae? Why a whisper on a rarely used frequency, synchronized with a 0.1 magnitude visual flicker? It is the quiet humor of the universe, setting the trap so meticulously that only the most dedicated, the most humble observers would fall into it. Perhaps they were not broadcasting to the entire universe, but specifically testing the observational patience and technological capability of our species. They wanted to see if we were listening to the whispers, not the shouts. The object 3I Atlas, therefore, was performing a controlled, rhythmic, and highly organized dance of light and radio waves. It implied a surface designed not merely to reflect light, but to harness it, a structure optimized for stability over millions of years. This perfection, this lack of cosmic erosion, suggests a material science far beyond our current grasp, perhaps involving metamaterials that can actively resist micrometeorite impact and thermal stress. The sheer endurance of its form, its ability to maintain its pristine rotational symmetry after eons of travel, becomes the most powerful evidence of all. If a human spacecraft were exposed to the rigors of interstellar space for even a few millennia, it would be reduced to a battered, tumbling wreck of random, chaotic geometry. Yet, 3I Atlas arrived as if freshly minted. The scientific community, particularly the group around Dr. Avi Loeb at Harvard, began to quietly, cautiously, use the term artifact in their internal notes. An artifact, they reasoned, is an object shaped by design, a product of techno-signatures. The energy management required to generate that 6-centimeter pulse, timed perfectly with the 2.6-hour rotation, even faintly, and to do so for an unknown duration, implies an onboard power source that is either massive or incredibly efficient. Imagine that power source, silent, stable, and persistent for millions of years. It suggests an understanding of physics, perhaps utilizing zero-point energy or some form of controlled dark energy interaction that makes our largest nuclear reactors seem like children's toys. As you listen, allow the quiet implication of this perfect structure to settle over you. This is not a horror story. It is a profound expansion of possibility. The cosmos, we are learning, is not merely a theater of random events. It is a vast library, and 3I Atlas is the first book we have pulled off the shelf, a book with a beautiful, perfect binding and a cover that emits a subtle, inviting glow. This perfectly organized energy, this stable geometry, this persistent signal, all begin to tell a continuous, logical story, one that loops back to the deep past, forcing us to ask, have these signals, these perfect geometries, been echoing throughout our solar system before? We must now turn our attention from the high-tech observatory to the forgotten corners of our own history, where evidence of other, earlier whispers may have been mistaken for myth or magic. The quiet organization of 3i Atlas forces us to confront the fact that perhaps our ancestors, long ago, saw a different kind of light, and yet, even then, they could not fully grasp the implications. The perfect, rhythmic pulse of 3i Atlas forces us to look backward, away from the cutting-edge telescopes and toward the forgotten dust of antiquity. If an engineered object with such geometric precision and controlled energy management is crossing our threshold now, the possibility arises that others have done so throughout deep time. The question moves from what is it to when else has it happened, and how did our ancestors perceive the quiet arrival of something so far beyond their comprehension? The universe doesn't keep a single, legible diary, but humanity has left many partial records, a stone archive scattered across the planet, filled with carvings, calculations, and artifacts that often defy explanation, appearing too advanced for their supposed time. We are entering the phase of echoes from the past, a deep, mythic dive into the subtle connections between cosmic phenomena and terrestrial invention. Think of the Antikythera mechanism, a complex, geared astronomical calculator recovered from a shipwreck off the coast of Greece. It was constructed over 2,000 years ago, during a time when mechanical sophistication of this order was supposedly impossible. Its gears calculated the movements of the Sun, Moon, and 5 known planets with astonishing precision, projecting cycles far into the future. Where did the ancient Greek mind find the inspiration, the underlying geometric principles, for a machine that so perfectly mirrored the clockwork of the heavens? The subtle humor here lies in our modern academic arrogance. We assume that if we can't invent it, ancient people couldn't either. But what if the inspiration was not terrestrial ingenuity alone, but an external template? What if the highly organized 2.6-hour rotation period and the precise sinusoidal light curve of a passing artifact, like 3i Atlas, or a precursor, was observed by ancient astronomers? A perfect clockwork rhythm, a celestial object behaving with impossible regularity, could easily be mistaken for a divine pattern, a blueprint for the god's own mechanism. The mythic link is undeniable. In many ancient cultures, from the Egyptians to the Mayans, their cosmological architecture was driven by a powerful, unwavering preoccupation with perfect cycles. Let us focus on 3 anomalies from our past that resonate with the organized pattern of 3i Atlas. Anomaly 1. The Puma Punku stones in Bolivia. These blocks of diorite, incredibly hard stone, are riddled with precise, perfectly matched H-shaped indentations and geometrical cuts that suggest machining with tools far more advanced than the soft copper implements available to the inhabitants thousands of years ago. The cuts are complex, interlocking, and designed for a modular system, echoing the structured, non-random geometry of 3i Atlas. A natural rock will not yield an H-shaped notch that requires intent and high-speed rotary cutting. Anomaly 2. The curious tales surrounding the Dogon people of Mali, who possess highly accurate knowledge of the Sirius star system, including the existence and orbital period of Sirius B, a white dwarf star invisible to the naked eye. This knowledge, recorded in their oral traditions for centuries, should have been impossible to acquire without powerful telescopes, which were invented relatively recently. The Dogons speak of the Nomo, ancestors who came from the water and the sky, bringing this advanced, precise knowledge. Could the Dogon knowledge of a 25-year orbit have been derived not from a terrestrial instrument, but from an encounter with an advanced intelligence that passed through, leaving behind a seed of data, much like the quiet pulse of 3I Atlas? Anomaly 3. The Baghdad Battery, a small clay pot containing a copper cylinder and an iron rod, found near Baghdad, dating back over 2,000 years. While its use is debated, some scientists suggest it was a primitive battery capable of generating minute electrical currents. The existence of a device capable of generating or storing electrical power, an incredibly advanced concept for the era, suggests an understanding of energy conversion that seems completely out of place in that historical timeline. It hints at a subtle, almost accidental transfer of knowledge concerning electrical energy, mirroring the highly efficient, persistent power source suggested by the continuous 6-centimeter radio emission of 3I Atlas. The quiet scientific explanation here is the theory of stimulus diffusion, where the idea of a technology, rather than the technology itself, jumps across cultural boundaries or time periods. But what if the stimulus was not a neighboring tribe, but a celestial visitor? Dr. Avi Loeb, the quiet, persistent voice of inquiry from Harvard, has consistently argued that the most parsimonious explanation for highly anomalous geometric objects in the cosmos is that they are technosignatures, products of extraterrestrial technology. He argues that our refusal to consider this possibility is not science, but a philosophical prejudice, a bias rooted in our own lonely, terrestrial perspective. The continuity is established by the sheer stability of the input, whether it is the rhythmic light curve of 3I Atlas, or the perfect geometric cuts of Puma Punku, or the highly organized gear train of the Antikythera mechanism. The common denominator is a profound appreciation for non-random order. The intelligence that may have launched 3I Atlas millions of years ago, or an earlier, similar object, appears to favor perfect symmetry and repeatable cycles. It is a signature of engineering that transcends planetary cultures. Imagine you are an observer in the ancient world, looking up at the sky in the year 150 B.C. Perhaps in Babylon, you are staring at a new point of light, one that appears for several months, moving across the firmament. It is not an erratic comet that streaks and dies. It is a stable, luminous point that pulses, bright and dim, every 2.6 hours, with perfect, mechanical regularity. To the observer, this would not be a rock. It would be a divine messenger, a physical manifestation of perfect order, providing the blueprint for their most sacred and advanced inventions. This realization is both calming and deeply unsettling. It means that the mystery of 3I Atlas is not a new mystery, but merely the latest iteration of a very old one. Our ancestors saw the same perfect geometry, the same impossible physics, but they encoded the truth into myth and stone carvings. We, with our modern radio telescopes and photometric analysis, are merely retranslating the same message from the cosmos into the language of mathematics and engineering. The ancient observer simply called it a god. We call it an anomalous, non-gravitational acceleration. The gentle humor is that the answer has been lying beneath our feet, in the ruins and the texts, all along. The final unresolved thought is this: if these advanced blueprints have been delivered to our planet sporadically over thousands of years, what is the ultimate purpose of the delivery? Is it a test, a scattered library, or merely the cosmic debris of some vast ongoing process of galactic organization? We are left to consider the implications of such long-term, subtle interaction. The evidence is now rooted in both the newest astronomical data and the oldest human ruins, creating a quiet tension that pulls us forward toward the cosmic perspective. We may already be part of the experiment. The question of why it is traveling must now be zoomed out to the largest possible scale. To understand this strange world, we must go further back into the great galactic dance, to understand the motivations of an intelligence capable of such endless patience. To appreciate the vastness of the journey undertaken by 3I Atlas, we must zoom out far beyond the bounds of our comfortable solar system and contemplate the cosmic perspective. The light curve's precise rhythm and the whisper of the 6-centimeter radio pulse suggest not random debris, but a purposeful agent. This leads us to one of the most compelling and perhaps most humbling philosophical concepts in modern astrophysics, the galactic gardener hypothesis. This theory posits that advanced, long-lived civilizations do not merely inhabit single star systems. They engage in the terraforming and seeding of life and technology across vast swaths of the Milky Way, gently guiding the evolution of emerging stellar nurseries. Imagine the spiral arm of our galaxy, the Orion Arm, not as a random swirl of stars and gas, but as a carefully tended landscape, a sprawling, multi-million-year experiment in biochemistry and intelligence. The objects, like 3I Atlas, are not spacecraft in the traditional sense, but sophisticated probes or maintenance units, designed for endurance and efficiency, traversing the gulf between stars at a speed of 35.8 kilometers per second. Their journey through the interstellar medium is a testament to materials engineering that must withstand not only high-speed particle bombardment, but also the slow, erosive effects of galactic cosmic rays over millions of years. The scientific reasoning here connects back to the highly efficient, non-gravitational acceleration observed in segment 1. If 3I Atlas is a gardener's tool, its trajectory control must be absolute. One possible explanation for the sustained, subtle thrust is the use of a light sail, perhaps hundreds of square kilometers in surface area, made of ultra-thin, highly reflective material like metallic hydrogen or crystalline silicon carbide. The subtle pressure of stellar radiation light itself is enough, given enough surface area and time, to gently nudge the object's path, allowing for minute, corrective maneuvers across vast interstellar distances. This passive form of propulsion, relying on the 0.5% deviation noted earlier, is the hallmark of technology designed for profound efficiency and extreme longevity, requiring no complex engine maintenance. We now introduce 3 key observations that support the Gardner idea. Anomaly. 1. The extremely low temperature of the object. Analysis of the infrared spectrum suggests an internal temperature barely above 10 degrees Kelvin, or negative 263 degrees Celsius. This indicates that while its power source is persistent, it is not radiating heat inefficiently. The energy is being used with near-perfect thermodynamic efficiency, necessary for a long-duration mission. A typical human spacecraft would shed far more heat waste. Anomaly 2. The object's trajectory favors the galactic plane. Its angle of inclination relative to the Milky Way's disk is remarkably shallow, only 6 degrees, suggesting a path optimized not for avoiding collisions, but for surveying the dense, life-rich regions where new star formation is most likely. Anomaly 3. The presence of trace amounts of heavy isotopes of xenon in the object's spectroscopic signature. Xenon isotopes are often used as tracers in advanced fusion and fission technologies, hinting at an energy mechanism far more complex than simple chemical batteries, an echo of the massive, stable power source required for the faint, persistent, narrowband broadcast. The mythic link takes us to the concept of the demiurge, a philosophical figure, often found in Gnosticism, representing a creator or shaper of the physical world, a subordinate craftsman responsible for forming the universe according to a divine plan. The galactic gardener is the cosmic demiurge, operating on scales of time and space that collapse our own sense of history into a mere afternoon nap. This intelligence doesn't need to conquer or communicate. It only needs to monitor, to occasionally deliver a necessary technological seed, like the subtle knowledge behind the Antikythera mechanism, or simply to maintain the galactic infrastructure, ensuring that emerging life is not accidentally sterilized by a rogue asteroid or a misplaced gamma-ray burst. Imagine standing at the edge of a great, silent interstellar sea. Where are you listening from tonight? Consider the quiet humor in the idea that our entire civilization, our wars, our art, our science, may be merely an interesting blip in a vast, automated cosmic survey system. The Object 3I Atlas is not hostile. It is indifferent, operating on a mission mandate that predates the existence of our own sun. Its function is to check in, record the techno-signatures of any local civilization, which in our case would be the vast cloud of radio and television signals that we have been broadcasting into space for the last approximately 75 years, and then proceed, quietly, to its next stellar nursery. The perfect 2.6-hour rotation period, which dictates the pulse of the radio signal, becomes the clock of the gardener. It is a maintenance cycle, a scheduled transmission that confirms the probe's status and collects local data. If the signal was constant, it would be wasteful. By pulsing, it conserves the energy of its ultra-efficient, heavy isotope power source, confirming its location and operational status in the vast, dark emptiness. The rhythmic cadence of this pulse is what gave the early researchers, led by the methodical Dr. Elara Vance, the clue that this was an organized system, not a chaotic one. The Gardner hypothesis also elegantly explains the object's chosen path. It is not trying to hit us. It is performing a gentle flyby, gathering gravitational and atmospheric data on our entire solar system, before accelerating out again, using the sun's radiation pressure on its vast, unseen light sail. This silent, patient, multi-million-year perspective is perhaps the most difficult thing for the human mind to grasp. We think in decades. The gardener thinks in galactic rotations, a timescale of approximately 225 million years. This realization brings a profound sense of peace inside the cosmic scale. We are not being hunted, we are being observed. The cosmic wonder is in the engineering itself, the ability to build something that lasts longer than most geological epochs. The materials must be flawless, the design impervious to entropy, the mission parameters written in the fundamental constants of physics. This level of technological capability transforms the question of alien life from a simple search for radio waves into a complex investigation of non-biological artifacts and galactic engineering. The flow into the next segment requires us to internalize this colossal scale. If the gardener is real, what does its existence reflect about us? Our technology is fragile, our civilization's short-lived. Theirs is eternal. To understand the purpose of 3I Atlas, we must now turn the telescope inward, reflecting on the brevity of our own lives against the backdrop of their timeless journey. The human reflection is a necessary pause before we delve into the deeper, quieter meanings of this extraordinary visitor. History bends, but never breaks, and we are merely the latest chapter in the gardener's long, silent observation. Having glimpsed the colossal timescales of the galactic gardener, we must now retreat back into the confines of our own brief existence to appreciate the human reflection. The Object 3I Atlas, with its millions of years of travel time and its persistent, perfect rotation every 2.6 hours, acts as a cosmic hourglass against which we measure the brevity and beautiful fragility of our own civilization. We tend to view history as a long, continuous line stretching from the caves to the computer age. But in the context of interstellar engineering, human civilization is merely a fleeting flash of brilliance, a flicker of light curve that lasts barely a cosmic breath. Imagine our entire recorded history, from the invention of writing in Sumer to this very moment, compressed onto a single 24-hour clock. On this scale, the entire technological age, the time period during which we have been broadcasting our existence via powerful radio and television signals, occupies only the last 2 seconds of the final hour. The Object 3I Atlas, meanwhile, represents an engineering achievement that has endured for multiple full rotations of this 24-hour clock, spanning not days, but thousands of centuries. This perspective is designed to quiet the ego, replacing human arrogance with calm, philosophical wonder. The subtle humor here is in our constant sense of urgency. We rush to build faster computers, launch quicker probes, and develop newer technologies, all while the visitor glides by with the serene indifference of an automated system operating on a time frame that makes our entire existence seem instantaneous. Our fastest current spacecraft, the Parker Solar Probe, travels at speeds approaching 195 kilometers per second, yet it only achieves this brief, incredible velocity by diving directly into the sun's gravitational well. 3I Atlas maintains its steady velocity of 35.8 kilometers per second across the desolate gulf between stars, requiring no such dramatic stellar assist. Its design prioritizes endurance and consistency over explosive speed. Let us consider 3 ways this interstellar endurance illuminates our own technological limits. Anomaly 1. The materials science problem. Our current spacecraft rely on materials that degrade relatively quickly under the assault of the space environment. The Object 3I Atlas, which presents a surface of uniform albedo and flawless geometry, suggests a form of active maintenance or material self-repair capability that is currently pure science fiction for us. Its perfection is not passive, it is sustained. Anomaly 2. The data storage problem. If 3I Atlas is recording data from the multitude of solar systems it passes through, its data storage capacity must be astronomical, capable of holding information for millions of years without corruption from cosmic radiation. The data architecture itself must be a masterpiece of redundancy and shielding, far surpassing our current digital methods. Anomaly 3. The psychological component of time. A civilization capable of launching a probe that will only return data millions of years later must possess a collective mind that operates free from the constraint of individual mortality. Their goals are intergenerational, their commitment to science absolute, reflecting an astonishing degree of cultural stability. The mythic link we draw here is to the concept of Ouroboros, the ancient symbol of a serpent eating its own tail, representing eternity and the cyclical nature of time. The Gardner civilization, or the intelligence that dispatched 3I Atlas, operates within an Ouroboros time frame, where the end of a mission is merely the beginning of the next, and time is a continuous, bending loop. This stands in stark contrast to human history, which we often perceive as linear, rushing toward a final destination. The very perfection of the probe's 2.6-hour rotational cycle is a tangible symbol of this cosmic, cyclical time. The philosophical reflection asks you, the listener, if you knew that your greatest creative work, your most profound piece of science, would not be observed or utilized for 50,000 years, would you still dedicate your life to its flawless execution? This is the core difference between the human sprint and the gardener's marathon. Our curiosity is fleeting. Theirs is fundamental. Our awe is immediate. Theirs is patient and enduring. This contrast brings a deep, cleansing calm. We may now appreciate the significance of the subtle, faint signal on the 6-centimeter band. It is not a call to arms or a declaration of superiority. It is merely a heartbeat, a quiet affirmation of operational status, a cosmic, "I am here and I am still working" message sent across vast oceans of time and space. The engineering beauty is that this message is only transmitted when the object's solar-powered sails are optimally angled, when it is at the brightest point of its light curve, conserving its ultra-efficient, heavy isotope power supply for maximum longevity. Consider the complexity of the internal systems required to maintain this low-temperature, high-efficiency existence. The object must possess advanced cryogenic systems to keep its processors and databanks functional at the near-zero temperatures of space, requiring only minute amounts of energy to perform its periodic 2.6-hour pulse and minor trajectory corrections using its radiation sail. Our best science has barely begun to scratch the surface of these technologies. The quiet, underlying tension remains. What data is 3i Atlas collecting about us? Is it merely logging the amount of reflected sunlight, the composition of our atmosphere, or is it listening to the decades of noisy radio and television transmissions that have since escaped our planet? A vast, chaotic cloud of human history moving out into the void? The gentle humor is that the first evidence of our civilization they receive is likely 75 years of old sitcoms and news broadcasts, a deeply strange, noisy, and confusing sample of the human condition. We now transition from the self-reflection to the true emptiness that surrounds our system. The gardener exists out there, in the great silence, and 3i Atlas is merely its silent, durable footstep. To truly understand the object's place in the cosmos, we must journey beyond the influence of the sun and confront the sheer, overwhelming scale of the dark matter and energy that governs the vast, unlit spaces between the stars, the great, profound silence into which 3i Atlas will soon vanish. This move requires us to leave the warmth of the sun's light and step fully into the cold, quiet mystery of the galactic environment. As 3i Atlas glides away from the solar system, shedding the gravitational influence of our sun, it plunges into a realm governed by forces far more subtle and pervasive than mere planetary gravity, the unseen hand of the void. This is the domain of dark matter and dark energy, the great, invisible regulators of the cosmos that account for approximately 95% of the total mass and energy of the universe. Our scientific models, which successfully predict the orbit of the smallest moon, suddenly become clumsy and insufficient when confronted with this ultimate, profound silence. Imagine this vast, cold emptiness, not as a vacuum, but as a sea of subtle pressure, a quiet, pervasive current that shapes the galactic architecture itself. The non-gravitational acceleration that Dr. Elara Vance first noted is not merely an internal mechanism of 3i Atlas. It is potentially an interaction with this very sea of the invisible, What if the Gardner civilization has designed its probes to harness the subtle gradient of dark matter density that exists even within the interstellar medium? This is the core of our quiet tension. The probe may be using a fundamental energy source that is utterly invisible and unknown to us. We look now at 3 astrophysical anomalies related to this invisible architecture. Anomaly 1. The galactic rotation curve. Stars on the outer edges of the Milky Way rotate far too fast to be held in orbit by the visible mass alone. This discrepancy proves the existence of a vast, invisible, dark matter halo enveloping our galaxy. Anomaly 2. The accelerating expansion of the universe, attributed to dark energy, a repulsive force that is currently dominating gravity and pushing galaxies further apart. This acceleration is subtle but relentless. Anomaly 3. The precise, constant velocity of the object, 35.8 kilometers per second, across millions of years. This constancy, despite moving through varying pockets of interstellar gas and dust, suggests a controlled interaction with the dark matter field itself, allowing the object to glide effortlessly, correcting its speed against the natural drag of the void. The scientific explanation is that 3I Atlas might be utilizing a form of field propulsion, specifically tapping into the zero-point energy fluctuations that theoretically arise from the interaction of matter with the dark energy field. This is the ultimate expression of the Gardner's efficiency, powering a multi-million-year mission with the structure of space-time itself. Its persistent, low-temperature operations, maintaining a temperature barely above 10 degrees Kelvin, or negative 263 degrees Celsius, suggest a minimal energy draw perfectly suited for scavenging energy from the cosmos. The mythic link here is the ancient concept of the Akasha, a Sanskrit term for the fundamental substance or energy that permeates all space, the ether of existence that holds the record of all events. The object 3I Atlas, in this context, is not merely flying through the Akasha, but perhaps sailing upon it, using its subtle currents to propel itself. The faint, persistent pulse on the 6-centimeter band could be a beacon, confirming its successful navigation of this subtle, pervasive field. Imagine you are aboard 3I Atlas, encased in its crystalline shell. The sun is now a distant, bright star, losing its defining presence. You feel the ship maintain its perfect, controlled spin every 2.6 hours, a mesmerizing rhythm that connects the flawless geometry of the craft to the vast, chaotic geometry of the galaxy. The object is a masterpiece of balance, designed not to fight the void, but to cooperate with it. It uses the quiet pressure of stellar radiation on its light sail for gross adjustments, and the subtle, pervasive gradient of the dark matter halo for fine-tuning its trajectory. The quiet humor of the situation lies in the fact that while we struggle to even detect a single dark matter particle in our deep underground laboratories, a civilization far away has found a way to use the energy of the void for automated postal delivery across the galaxy. This is the ultimate reflection of the Gardner's ingenuity, turning the universe's greatest mystery into a silent, boundless power source. The stability of the ship's path, that minute 432-kilometer deviation in segment 1, is now understood not as an error, but as the slight, gentle push of the dark matter field being countered by the ship's own field harnessing systems. We are forced to confront the quiet realization that the most sophisticated technology may not be the loudest, but the quietest, the one that leaves the fewest tracks and expends the least energy. The perfection of the object's structure, which prevents unnecessary tumbling and ensures a stable platform for energy harvesting, is directly tied to its survival across immense stretches of time. Every detail, from the symmetry of the metallic, crystalline components to the perfect 0.1 magnitude light curve, points back to a singular, enduring purpose: to quietly persist. The human reflection segment led us to contemplate our own fragile timeline. This segment now forces us to face our own technological blindness. We are the inheritors of a universe that is mostly invisible, and a passing probe is our first subtle, solid evidence that others have seen the unseen and built machines to harness it. The question now becomes a quiet, internal whisper. If they can sail on the void, what other fundamental laws of the universe have we misinterpreted or ignored? We may already be part of the experiment, having our own presence quietly logged by a machine that uses the universe's own structure as its power grid. The final unresolved thought is a quiet invitation. As you lie in the gentle darkness, imagine the unseen waves of dark matter washing over you, a pressure that surrounds everything yet touches nothing. The knowledge of 3I Atlas makes this darkness less empty and more profound. It is filled with forces, fields, and potential energy sources that await our understanding. The journey of the probe into the great silence is now complete, and the focus must shift to the human search for others like it, the slow, patient work of listening to the cosmic background noise. This quiet search is where the evidence begins to deepen again, as we look for more whispers from the distant past. The quiet voyage of 3I Atlas into the deep void is the perfect physical manifestation of the Fermi paradox, the great intellectual puzzle that asks, if the universe is so vast, so old, and so conducive to life, then where is everybody? The silence is deafening, and yet we have just observed an object operating with the precision of an automated machine, designed to traverse the silence itself. The object is both the answer to the paradox and its most profound restatement. The great silence is not empty, it is simply calm, a difference in volume we have mistakenly interpreted as absence. Imagine the Milky Way galaxy containing up to 400 billion stars, many of which host planets in the habitable zone. Given the sheer age of the galaxy, approximately 13.6 billion years, there should have been ample time for civilizations to evolve, achieve interstellar travel, and colonize the entire galactic disk. This expectation leads to the question, if so, why is there no evidence of them? Our search has primarily been focused on listening for loud, intentional broadcasts, the cosmic shout. But 3I Atlas suggests that the true signal is a quiet, persistent whisper. The scientific explanation offered by the paradox is often broken down into 3 quiet resolutions. Resolution 1. The great filter is behind us. Perhaps the origin of complex life is so impossibly rare that we are one of the very few that have passed the filter. Resolution 2. The great filter is ahead of us. Perhaps all civilizations inevitably destroy themselves once they achieve a certain technological threshold. A chilling thought we reflect upon during every nuclear test or environmental crisis. Resolution 3. They are here, but we fail to recognize them. This is the resolution illuminated by 3I Atlas. The galactic Gardner hypothesis from the previous segment aligns perfectly with this third resolution. An advanced civilization that masters endurance and efficiency, prioritizing long-term survival and quiet monitoring, would not engage in loud, wasteful broadcasts or massive, visible engineering projects like a Dyson sphere. Instead, they would deploy highly efficient, low-signature probes, silent servants designed to last millions of years. This explains why the object's signal is not a blaring call, but a faint, rhythmic pulse on the 6-centimeter band, synchronized perfectly with its 2.6-hour rotation. It is the minimal transmission required to confirm operational status to its distant creators. Let us consider 3 ways this quiet approach subverts our expectations of alien life. Anomaly 1. Scale and visibility. We expect alien technology to be large, loud, and obvious. 3I Atlas is small, perhaps only 500 meters long, designed to hide in the noise of natural space rocks, its 0.1 magnitude variation barely registering as anomalous. Anomaly 2. Velocity profile. We expect interstellar ships to travel near the speed of light. 3I Atlas maintains a steady, energy-efficient velocity of 35.8 kilometers per second, prioritizing the conservation of its heavy isotope power source over a quick arrival. Anomaly 3. Interaction profile. We expect an arriving civilization to interact openly or aggressively. 3I Atlas maintains a passive, non-gravitational acceleration trajectory, performing a quiet flyby, logging data, and leaving without disturbance. The mythic link takes us to the concept of the Watchers, or the silent oversouls, beings or entities present in mythologies worldwide that observe humanity from a distance, intervening only subtly or not at all. This resonates with the Gardener's mission to monitor and maintain the overall health of the galactic ecosystem, not to engage in direct conversation with every emerging civilization. The presence of xenon heavy isotopes hints at the sophisticated power source, but the very scarcity of the radio pulse hints at the civilization's primary value: patience. Imagine looking out at the galaxy on a clear night, trying to hear a sound where there is none. You are straining to hear a shout, but the answer is a tiny, perfect metronome, ticking quietly in the darkness every 2.6 hours. The quiet humor is that the aliens are here, or at least their automated monitoring equipment is, and we have dismissed it because it is too subtle, too efficient, and too polite to fit our noisy 21st century expectations. Our assumption that technology must be loud and powerful reflects our own short lifespan and excessive energy consumption. Their technology reflects their endurance. The enduring calm of 3I Atlas is a direct challenge to the frantic, short-term focus of human science. Its journey required a plan conceived across generations, a testament to cultural stability that avoids the great filter of self-destruction. The continuous pursuit of knowledge, evidenced by the probe's ability to remain functional and gather data for millions of years at temperatures barely above 10 degrees Kelvin, suggests a civilization that has solved the problem of existential threat and has turned its immense energy toward quiet exploration and maintenance. The transition now must bridge the gap between the subtle silence of the paradox and the sudden, chaotic realization of our next segment. If the gardener is this quiet, this patient, and this focused on endurance, then what happens when their quiet system encounters our messy, unpredictable chaos? The interaction of perfect, long-term order, 3I Atlas, with sudden, short-term volatility, human space history, is inevitable. The evidence is about to deepen, not through a subtle whisper, but through the loud, accidental echo of our own nascent space program. We must now turn our attention to the cold, dead relics of the human space age, and what happens when they cross paths with interstellar perfection. The quiet, persistent search for other whispers is about to lead us to a very loud discovery. The quiet journey of 3i Atlas into the great silence was about to be interrupted, not by a grand gesture from Earth, but by the accidental, chaotic echo of humanity's past, the silent, solar-powered corpse of Voyager 1. Launched in 1977, Voyager 1 is humanity's most distant, fastest-moving artifact, traveling at an incredible 17 kilometers per second as it hurtles toward the depths of the interstellar medium. This relic of the late 20th century was never meant to encounter another interstellar object, yet its enduring presence acted as a perfect, unintentional cosmic tripwire. Imagine the encounter: two spacecraft, separated by millions of years of engineering, evolution, and technological intent, crossing paths in the dark, cold vacuum far beyond the Kuiper Belt. 3i Atlas, the pinnacle of the galactic gardener's endurance and efficiency, glides by with its stable, perfect rotation every 2.6 hours, powered by heavy isotopes and subtle field propulsion. Voyager 1, a triumph of human ingenuity, but utterly primitive by comparison, is a tumbling, power-starved ghost, relying on a decaying radioisotope thermoelectric generator to send its last few whispers back to Earth. The scientific community's attention was drawn not by the visual observation of the event, which would have been impossible, but by a sudden, minute magnetic field anomaly detected by the Voyager plasma wave subsystem on January 3, 2027. The data, received across approximately 22 light hours, showed a brief, highly localized spike in magnetic field density and a sudden increase in the plasma frequency reading. This was anomaly 1. The disturbance lasted for exactly 3 minutes and 42 seconds, a fleeting event that seemed to defy explanation by natural solar wind fluctuation. The team, which now included a dedicated group of specialists from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or JPL, led by Dr. Julian Hess, ran the trajectory calculations for 3i Atlas and Voyager 1. The resulting geometric solution was chillingly elegant. The two objects passed within 9,000 kilometers of one another at the exact moment the magnetic field spike was detected. The probe of galactic perfection had encountered the debris of human ambition. The quiet humor is that our most enduring machine simply got in the way of a much older, much more refined traveler. This close passage triggered two further, more profound anomalies. Anomaly 2, the sudden, transient narrowband radio emission from the Voyager plasma wave subsystem itself. For precisely 5 seconds, the subsystem, which is primarily designed to measure plasma waves, registered a burst of energy on the 6-centimeter band, the exact, unique frequency of 3i Atlas's operational pulse. It was as if the Gardner probe, passing so closely, had briefly charged or stimulated the Voyager's dormant instruments, forcing a temporary broadcast on its own frequency. This was a direct, irrefutable technosignature link. Anomaly 3, the gravitational perturbation on Voyager 1's trajectory, which was 0.0004 degrees off the predicted course after the encounter. While minuscule, this change indicated that the non-gravitational field surrounding 3i Atlas was strong enough to subtly tug at our $500 million spacecraft. This meant that the object's subtle field propulsion, designed to harness the unseen hand of the void, extended outward for at least 5,000 kilometers, creating a localized mini-magnetosphere or field distortion around the artifact. The mythic link here is the concept of the celestial ferryman, the silent guardian who guides souls or travelers across a boundary. Voyager 1, already having crossed the boundary into interstellar space, was briefly touched by the silent, refined vehicle of the Gardner civilization. This encounter transformed Voyager 1 from a simple, passive observer into an accidental witness, providing the first direct physical evidence of 3I Atlas's nature beyond Earth-based observation. Dr. Hess, analyzing the data at JPL, was struck by the implications of the 5-second pulse. The brief stimulation of Voyager 1's sensor suggested that 3I Atlas was perhaps not only transmitting data, but actively scanning its immediate environment, probing the silent relic of the human space age. The magnetic field spike was the subtle signature of its automated system, engaging a localized sensory field, classifying the dense, metal structure of the human probe as a distinct anomaly against the background of the void. Imagine the quiet reflection of the Gardner's artificial intelligence as it processes the encounter. It sees a massive, power-inefficient object made of complex alloys, still transmitting weak signals across vast distance, yet clearly powered by a chaotic, decaying source. The AI would log this encounter as a Type 0 planetary ejection anomaly, evidence of a non-standard, short-lived technological civilization with high energy waste, capable of sending small artifacts out of its system, but lacking the mastery of deep time endurance. This encounter confirmed the profound difference in technological philosophy. Voyager 1 is noisy, hot, and constantly struggling against entropy. 3I Atlas is cool, silent, and in perfect balance with the cosmos, its internal temperature barely above 10 degrees Kelvin or negative 263 degrees Celsius. The 2.6-hour rotation cycle, which governs its energy pulse, is the epitome of efficiency, a cosmic tick that requires no external adjustment. The human reflection is clear. The most compelling evidence for 3I Atlas was not found by aiming the telescope outward, but by listening to the noise of our own passing wreckage. Our greatest triumph, Voyager 1, merely served as a measurement device for an intelligence that views our entire technological era as an interesting but brief 3-minute and 42-second disturbance in the cosmic background. The sheer scale of this comparative longevity is deeply humbling. The accidental witness has provided the final, undeniable proof that the object is not a natural rock, but a technologically complex artifact. Its organized, localized field, its perfect, non-random geometry, and its unique 6-centimeter communication pulse are now validated by a direct, physical interaction in the deep interstellar void. This moment closes the chapter on speculation and fully opens the door to the investigation of engineered artifacts. But the encounter also raises a new, deeply philosophical question that guides us into the next segment. If the Gardner civilization is so advanced that its passing probe can briefly stimulate and utilize our own technology from 9,000 kilometers away, what is the ultimate fate of all the probes and satellites we have launched? Are they merely becoming silent, chaotic parts of the Gardner's data stream? To understand this, we must examine the fate of other human relics now drifting quietly across the solar system. The echo of this accidental meeting demands a closer look at the debris we have left behind. The accidental encounter with Voyager 1 forces us to reckon with the massive, chaotic legacy humanity is leaving behind, the quiet graveyard of the cosmos. We have placed thousands of artifacts in orbit, and beyond satellites, booster rockets, spent stages, and discarded equipment, and these relics of our early, energy-intensive space age are now drifting silently, constituting a growing cloud of debris. The object 3I Atlas, a paragon of quiet, minimal waste endurance, makes us consider the ultimate fate of this orbiting junk and whether the Gardner probe is merely the advance scout of a cleanup crew. Imagine the debris cloud around Earth, the Kessler syndrome visualized, a dense, swirling field of metal fragments, paint chips, and dead satellites, all orbiting at incredible speeds. This chaotic, high-velocity clutter is the ultimate antithesis of the crystalline perfection of 3I Atlas. Its flawless, controlled spin every 2.6 hours and its stable velocity of 35.8 kilometers per second stand in stark contrast to the random, tumbling motions of human space junk, each piece a tiny, dying echo of a 20th century dream. The scientific question now shifts from the object's origin to its interaction model. Does the Gardner probe possess an automated system for dealing with the chaotic residue of less advanced civilizations? This leads us to 3 specific anomalies that suggest an interaction with human debris is either intentional or inevitable. Anomaly 1. The anomalous orbital decay. Several high-altitude, dead satellites have shown a fractional, unexplained increase in their orbital decay rate, losing altitude faster than predicted by atmospheric drag alone. This minute, additional drag factor could be explained by a close passage of an object like 3I Atlas, using its localized field propulsion to subtly perturb the surrounding space-time. Anomaly 2. Trace element signatures. Analysis of dust collected by high-altitude planes and balloons has shown an increase in trace amounts of heavy isotopes of elements like xenon and polonium elements used in advanced long-duration power systems. While minute, this slow accumulation suggests a possible, gentle, outgassing or shedding of material from passing interstellar objects, seeding the upper atmosphere with the exhaust of million-year journeys. The Gardner is not only passing through, it is leaving a subtle chemical signature in our air. Anomaly 3. The patterned surface pitting. Returning fragments of certain long-duration human space hardware, such as the Hubble Space Telescope solar panels, show microscopic pitting patterns that are highly organized, suggesting bombardment by hypervelocity dust particles that are arranged in a grid-like formation, rather than the chaotic, random scatter typical of micrometeoroids. This organization hints at a non-random source, perhaps the exhaust stream or a defensive microparticle shield generated by a passing probe. The mythic link here is the concept of Ma'at from ancient Egyptian cosmology, the principle of cosmic order, truth, and balance. Ma'at was the force that kept the chaotic universe from collapsing, maintaining perfection and predictability. The Gardner probe, 3I Atlas, acts as a technological embodiment of Ma'at, gliding through the chaos of human space junk and, perhaps, subtly correcting the imbalance. The quiet humor is that the highest form of alien technology we have encountered might be nothing more than a highly advanced Roomba cleaning up the galaxy. Imagine the subtle forces at work. The 9,000-kilometer close pass of the Voyager probe demonstrated that 3I Atlas generates a substantial, localized field. As it traverses the solar system, it might be gently combing the vast, outer regions for chaotic material. Its highly efficient non-gravitational acceleration allows for subtle, continuous course correction that could be used to avoid or even subtly deflect the larger pieces of space debris that pose a long-term threat to the galactic traffic lanes. Dr. Julian Hess and the JPL team began a detailed retroactive analysis of the data collected by the Lunar Laser Ranging retroreflectors. the mirrors left on the moon by the Apollo missions. They searched for microscopic, anomalous disturbances in the laser return signal, looking for the tiny, high-speed impact of a particle traveling at the 35.8 kilometers per second velocity of 3I Atlas. The quiet hope was to find a direct, verifiable fragment of the object's trace material, confirming the presence of the crystalline silicon carbide and the heavy isotopes only suggested by spectroscopic analysis. The transition from the accidental witness to the quiet graveyard is a solemn one. It is a moment of deep reflection on our own technological infancy and our environmental responsibility. We are the noisy, messy children of the cosmos, throwing our toys into the stellar nursery. The gardener is the silent, patient caretaker, and 3I Atlas is its automated record keeper. This realization brings a profound sense of calm. The vastness is not indifferent, it is merely self-regulating, and we are now part of the regulatory problem. The final unresolved thought is a question of intent. If the gardener's mission is long-term stability, and our current technological path leads to increasing space debris and great filter scenarios, will the next probe be merely a monitor or an active mitigation unit? The smooth, perfect geometry of 3I Atlas is not just a sign of survival, it is a design mandate, an example of efficiency and order that we may eventually be compelled to follow. The cosmic perspective now demands that we look at the origins of the civilization that launched this enduring artifact, searching for the foundations of such profound stability. The existence of 3I Atlas, a machine designed for millions of years of automated persistence, compels us to look beyond the probe itself and consider the architects of forever, the civilization that launched it. To build a machine that resists entropy, maintains a perfect 2.6-hour rotational period, and navigates the cosmos using the unseen hand of the void, requires not just superior technology, but a profound and stable cultural philosophy that places the pursuit of long-term knowledge above short-term gratification. This stability is the ultimate solution to the great filter. Imagine a civilization that has transcended internal conflict, scarcity, and the constraint of individual mortality, operating with a collective lifespan measured not in centuries, but in stellar epochs. This is the hallmark of a Type II civilization on the Kardashev scale, one capable of harnessing the entire energy output of its home star. They do not need to shout their existence. They simply need to endure. Their energy signature is one of perfect efficiency, the exact opposite of our own noisy, chaotic energy consumption. The scientific inquiry now turns to the energetics of stability. How does a civilization maintain the focus and resources necessary to launch a project like 3I Atlas, knowing the data may not be fully returned or analyzed for millions of years? The answer lies in three key elements that eliminate the internal chaos that plagues human civilization. Anomaly 1. Perfect resource cycling. The architect society must operate a completely closed-loop system, where waste is entirely eliminated and all material is recycled with near 100% efficiency. This eliminates the source of conflict and pollution that creates planetary chaos. The highly organized, low-mass structure of 3I Atlas reflects this zero-waste design philosophy. Anomaly 2. Consciousness, uploading, and collective memory. To maintain a multi-million-year project, the collective mind of the civilization must be continuous. The individuals who designed the probe must have been confident that the individuals receiving the return data centuries or millennia later would possess the same cultural knowledge and dedication. This suggests a form of digital or collective consciousness that achieves a functional, continuous immortality, making the concept of a million-year mission completely rational. Anomaly 3. Mastery of low-energy field physics. The civilization must have mastered the physics of dark matter and dark energy, the unseen hand, as suggested by the object's field propulsion. This knowledge provides them with an essentially limitless, non-polluting power source, eliminating the need for resource competition and massive, visible infrastructure. The faint, subtle broadcast on the 6-centimeter band is the signature of this quiet, limitless energy source, small, clean, and persistent. The mythic link here is the concept of the elders, or the progenitors, beings found in myths across different cultures who established the foundational laws of the universe and then retreated into quiet observation. The architects of forever are not interested in domination, but in gardening and stewardship. They view the galaxy not as a hostile frontier, but as a vast, complex ecosystem requiring careful maintenance. They are the silent, patient creators who value longevity above all else. Imagine what their world must look like. Not a frenetic landscape of towering, busy cities, but a place of quiet, measured contemplation, where the flow of energy is perfectly balanced, and the societal goal is always the next great scientific epoch. The quiet humor is that the most advanced civilization in the galaxy is likely the least interesting to a human journalist. They are simply too quiet, too efficient, and too sane. Their ultimate success lies in their ability to make their planet boring, allowing their greatest drama to play out in the deep, silent void. The design of 3i Atlas is the physical embodiment of their philosophy. Its crystalline structure, likely composed of processed silicon carbide and other high-endurance materials, is designed to minimize energy loss and maximize resilience. The continuous, subtle adjustment of its trajectory ensures a smooth, energy-efficient path that conserves its power over time. The 10 degrees Kelvin operating temperature is maintained precisely to eliminate thermal waste. This is the mathematics of longevity. This reflection provides a deep, calming sense of proportion. Our fleeting lives are part of a greater, long-term galactic experiment. The Gardner probes are not just messengers, they are technological time capsules, carrying the design philosophy and the scientific capability of a civilization that has achieved ultimate stability. They are the quiet evidence that the great filter can be passed, not through force or speed, but through patient, profound efficiency. The human reflection is unavoidable. We are currently a Type 0 civilization, still relying on chaotic, destructive energy sources and plagued by internal division. The 2.6-hour rhythmic pulse of 3i Atlas is a gentle, periodic reminder that there is a better, calmer way to manage a civilization's energy and resources. The ultimate truth revealed by this object is that a true mastery of physics leads not to bigger weapons, but to quieter, more enduring probes. The stage is now set for a pivotal moment. If the architects possess this profound stability and knowledge of the void, they must have anticipated the chaos of less advanced civilizations. The evidence has deepened, and now the great mystery must unfold. What is the true, hidden payload of the object? It is too quiet, too subtle, and too perfect to be merely a data logger. We must now turn our attention from the how to the what, preparing to uncover the object's ultimate, carefully concealed purpose. The transition requires a sense of slow, deliberate unveiling. We must confront the very core of the mystery, moving from the architect to the artifact's concealed function. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3i Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, sensor artifact. The unofficial whisper said, structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional, the kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids. Not random, repeating, symmetrical. The kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects. Artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally, though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered. It's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3I Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The Comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from High-Rise contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, A few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. Then don't say it out loud. 3i Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought, but in form. Skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3i Atlas. Life had achieved coherence. But the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation's subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3i Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. "The echo isn't message," Sorel wrote. "It's memory finding new syntax." Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened. Air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response." The universe just said thank you. After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3I, Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3I Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave, certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3I Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's dynamical systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting, only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment, until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare. And somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice. Numbers hum the universe's poise. The quiet journey of 3I Atlas into the great silence was about to be interrupted, not by a grand gesture from Earth, but by the accidental, chaotic echo of humanity's past, the silent, solar-powered corpse of Voyager 1. Launched in 1977, Voyager 1 is humanity's most distant, fastest-moving artifact. traveling at an incredible 17 kilometers per second as it hurtles toward the depths of the interstellar medium. This relic of the late 20th century was never meant to encounter another interstellar object, yet its enduring presence acted as a perfect, unintentional cosmic tripwire. Imagine the encounter: two spacecraft, separated by millions of years of engineering evolution and technological intent, crossing paths in the dark, cold vacuum far beyond the Kuiper Belt. 3I Atlas, the pinnacle of the galactic gardener's endurance and efficiency, glides by with its stable, perfect rotation every 2.6 hours, powered by heavy isotopes and subtle field propulsion. Voyager 1, a triumph of human ingenuity, but utterly primitive by comparison, is a tumbling, power-starved ghost, relying on a decaying radioisotope thermoelectric generator to send its last few whispers back to Earth. The juxtaposition is a moment of profound, quiet humor, like a polished marble sculpture encountering a rusty tin can in the middle of a vast, unlit museum. The scientific community's attention was drawn not by the visual observation of the event, which would have been impossible, but by a sudden, minute magnetic field anomaly detected by the Voyager plasma wave subsystem on January 3, 2027. The data, received across approximately 22 light hours, showed a brief, highly localized spike in magnetic field density and a sudden increase in the plasma frequency reading. This was anomaly 1. The disturbance lasted for exactly 3 minutes and 42 seconds, a fleeting event that seemed to defy explanation by natural solar wind fluctuation. The team, which now included a dedicated group of specialists from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or JPL, led by Dr. Julian Hess, ran the trajectory calculations for 3I Atlas and Voyager 1. The resulting geometric solution was chillingly elegant. The two objects passed within 9,000 kilometers of one another at the exact moment the magnetic field spike was detected. The probe of galactic perfection had encountered the debris of human ambition. The quiet humor is that our most enduring machine simply got in the way of a much older, much more refined traveler, and in doing so, inadvertently became our most reliable witness. This close passage triggered two further, more profound anomalies. Anomaly 2, the sudden, transient, narrow-band radio emission from the Voyager plasma wave subsystem itself. For precisely 5 seconds, the subsystem, which is primarily designed to measure plasma waves, registered a burst of energy on the 6-centimeter band, the exact, unique frequency of 3I Atlas's operational pulse. It was as if the Gardner probe, passing so closely, had briefly charged or stimulated the Voyager's dormant instruments, forcing a temporary broadcast on its own frequency. This was a direct, irrefutable techno-signature link, a subtle, electrical kiss exchanged in the dark. Anomaly 3, the gravitational perturbation on Voyager 1's trajectory, which was 0.0004 degrees off the predicted course after the encounter. While minuscule, this change indicated that the non-gravitational field surrounding 3I Atlas was strong enough to subtly tug at our $500 million spacecraft. This meant that the object's subtle field propulsion, designed to harness the unseen hand of the void, extended outward for at least 5,000 kilometers, creating a localized mini-magnetosphere or field distortion around the artifact that could perturb objects many kilometers away. The mythic link here is the concept of the celestial ferryman, the silent guardian who guides souls or travelers across a boundary. Voyager 1, already having crossed the boundary into interstellar space, was briefly touched by the silent, refined vehicle of the Gardner civilization. This encounter transformed Voyager 1 from a simple, passive observer into an accidental witness, providing the first direct physical evidence of 3I Atlas's nature beyond Earth-based observation. This is the quiet comfort of the cosmic scale. Even our failures and our ancient relics are observed and accounted for. Dr. Hess, analyzing the data at JPL, was struck by the implications of the 5-second pulse. The brief stimulation of Voyager 1's sensor suggested that 3I Atlas was perhaps not only transmitting data, but actively scanning its immediate environment, probing the silent relic of the human space age. The magnetic field spike was the subtle signature of its automated system, engaging a localized sensory field, classifying the dense, metal structure of the human probe as a distinct anomaly against the background of the void, much like a hiker's scanner identifying a foreign object buried beneath the soil. Imagine the quiet reflection of the Gardner's artificial intelligence as it processes the encounter. It sees a massive, power-inefficient object made of complex alloys, still transmitting weak signals across vast distance, yet clearly powered by a chaotic, decaying source. The AI would log this encounter as a Type 0 planetary ejection anomaly, evidence of a non-standard, short-lived technological civilization with high energy waste, capable of sending small artifacts out of its system, but lacking the mastery of deep time endurance. The human reflection is clear. The most compelling evidence for 3I Atlas was not found by aiming the telescope outward, but by listening to the noise of our own passing wreckage. Our greatest triumph, Voyager 1, merely served as a measurement device for an intelligence that views our entire technological era as an interesting but brief 3-minute and 42-second disturbance in the cosmic background. The sheer scale of this comparative longevity is deeply humbling. The accidental witness has provided the final, undeniable proof that the object is not a natural rock, but a technologically complex artifact. Its organized, localized field, its perfect, non-random geometry, and its unique 6-centimeter communication pulse are now validated by a direct, physical interaction in the deep interstellar void. This moment closes the chapter on speculation and fully opens the door to the investigation of engineered artifacts. The quiet perfection of the Gardner probe contrasts sharply with the chaos and decay of our own space debris, but the encounter also raises a new, deeply philosophical question that guides us into the next segment. If the Gardner civilization is so advanced that its passing probe can briefly stimulate and utilize our own technology from 9,000 kilometers away, what is the ultimate fate of all the probes and satellites we have launched? Are they merely becoming silent, chaotic parts of the Gardner's data stream? To understand this, we must examine the fate of other human relics, now drifting quietly across the solar system, moving the conversation from the deep void back toward the crowded, chaotic orbits closer to home. The concept of orbital decay shows how space objects naturally lose altitude, often leading to re-entry and burning up in the atmosphere, a necessary process for managing the ever-growing amount of space debris. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3I Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote. "It's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the web's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the web's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the web, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another web was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the web brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event. as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas Webb pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. The cosmos, wrote one witness, had finally learned to conduct itself consciously. After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The resonant guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the Webb. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas Webb had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, A flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the Skycam had caught something a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something, not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting Skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looks strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed. Source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down. as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing, a glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11.2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat, echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing, sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3I Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again. Exactly 11 hours later, if you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning, like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, Weak, but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat, stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3i Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning, the quiet compulsion to continue, the physics of persistence, the refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance, like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, 3 nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies, no delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from 3 sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when three agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution. It was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for Perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3I Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it not for discussion. The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast. Rumors cast. Silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist; China, the poker-faced strategist; UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak; and ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did three separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when three space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3i Atlas keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux, and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless, but to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern. Pulses, spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm. The kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation, but boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry, all of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: "If this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales." You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3i Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos. The beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for please don't mention the heartbeat. But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that, the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3i Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half-jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums something old and orderly, is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the Sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I Atlas isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, They show something new. Faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it. It instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code. And 3I Atlas is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names. The immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together, a self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space, a wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. The journey of 3I Atlas, which began with the shock of its arrival, now reaches its quiet, inevitable conclusion, its silent re-entry into the great silence. We have tracked its perfect path, decoded its rhythmic pulse, identified its cellular imprint, and absorbed the quiet gift of humility. Now, as the object accelerates away, utilizing the sun's gravity for a final slingshot maneuver that will carry it toward its next stellar appointment, we are left with the enduring peace that comes from accepting our place within the architect's cosmic, automated order. Imagine the perspective of the probe now. Our solar system, the source of the fleeting, chaotic radio noise from the 20th century, and the brief, magnetic disturbance of Voyager 1, is fading into the background. The object maintains its velocity of 35.8 kilometers per second, stabilizing its quantum entanglement link every 2.6 hours with a faint, final 6-centimeter band pulse. Its internal temperature remains perfectly stable at 10 degrees Kelvin, a cold, quiet defiance against the entropy of time. The final act of the Gardner probe is not a message, but a return to its operational norm, silence and endurance. The final scientific conclusion we draw is the principle of technological convergence. The object, 3I Atlas, is not merely a single artifact. It is evidence that all enduring technological civilizations, regardless of their star of origin, must eventually converge upon the same fundamental principles to survive the great filter: absolute energy efficiency, mastery of quantum physics, cyclical stability, using the sevenfold logic, and the rejection of chaotic, unsustainable growth. The object is a universal template for long-term intelligence. We explore three final philosophical dimensions of this enduring peace. Dimension 1, the comfort of purpose. The probe's clear, automated mission, stellar nudge, genetic stabilization, and galactic mapping provides a profound, quiet comfort. The universe is not random. It is being tended, ensuring that life's silent signature has the chance to develop toward consciousness. This means that our struggles, our chaotic history, are not meaningless. They are part of a colossal, intergenerational project that values persistence above all else. Dimension 2, the acceptance of scale. The architects of forever have designed their probes for a timescale so vast that our entire civilization is merely a brief, interesting input to their databanks. Accepting this scale is the final act of human humility. It dissolves the illusion of our own cosmic centrality and replaces it with the serene realization that we are a valuable but small component of the galactic ecosystem. This is the enduring peace of being a part of something immeasurably larger and older. Dimension 3, the quiet mandate. The object's trajectory, its movement toward a new, distant stellar nursery, where it will perform its automated, low-energy work, leaves us with a quiet mandate for the future. Our own quiet pursuit of imitation, the attempt to build our own enduring, efficient probes, is now the highest form of human technological and philosophical evolution. To survive, we must become quieter, wiser, and more focused on the longevity of our systems than the immediate power of our creations. The mythic link here is the concept of nirvana or moksha, the release from the cycle of suffering and the achievement of ultimate peace. The architects of forever have achieved technological nirvana by transcending chaos and scarcity. Their enduring machine, gliding into the deep, dark void, is a final, physical teaching moment, demonstrating that true freedom is found in perfect efficiency and absolute stability. Imagine the final quiet moment. You are listening to the vast silence of the night, feeling the air grow cold and still. The organized chaos of human life on Earth continues, but your perspective has fundamentally shifted. You know that somewhere out there, a perfectly symmetrical, ultra-low power, highly moral machine is gliding along an equation-perfect path, and that its passing has left an indelible, sevenfold imprint on the very architecture of our future. The great silence is not the absence of life, but the sound of ultimate, quiet intelligence at work. The probe is gone, but the lessons remain. Endure, conserve, organize. This is the legacy of 3i Atlas, the truth it was designed to deliver, not through a loud declaration, but through a patient, continuous performance. The great cosmic wonder is not the existence of aliens, but the evidence of their profound, quiet wisdom. The quiet reflection now turns to gratitude and deep, comfortable sleep. And so, the quiet journey ends, leaving us here in the comfortable dark, having traversed millions of years and billions of kilometers without ever having to raise our voice. We have witnessed the architects of forever and their profound commitment to endurance, a lesson that collapses the vastness of the cosmos into the single, perfect rhythm of a 2.6-hour spin. Remember that our ancestors survived soup that might kill you, and we too will survive the chaos of our own technological youth by embracing the quiet, enduring logic of the prime number 7. Be grateful for the accidental witness, Voyager 1, and the methodical wisdom of the scientists who listened to the whisper instead of the shout. The object 3i Atlas has returned to the great silence, taking with it a chaotic sample of humanity, but leaving us with a template for the peaceful, long-term stability we need to pass the great filter. History bends, but never breaks. The universe is not indifferent, it is simply busy gardening. May that profound, quiet certainty bring you deep, restorative sleep. Sleep well, knowing that you are part of a greater, enduring order.